Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Daily Dizzle for Monday, January 10th, 2011. I'm Tommy Dizzlemits, as always. We've got a lot to cover today. NFL Wildcard Weekend was this past weekend. Of course, we got coverage on that in case you didn't check it out. We'll let you know who is going home and who is moving on in the playoffs. We've also got the top movies at the box office over the weekend. We'll tell you if True Grit was able to maintain the lead over Little Fockers and claim #1 for the weekend. We've got some latest movie news, including the third shooting location for The Dark Knight Rises and the plot coming out for Scream 4, which will be out in theaters very soon. In addition to that, we've got the worldwide box office from last week that we didn't get a chance to cover. Gulliver's Travels with Jack Black surprisingly on top around the world. So we've got all that to cover. We'll jump right in with the Wild Card Weekend coverage. So for the start of NFL Wild Card Weekend, the first game had the Saints taking on the Seahawks. The Saints, of course, were defending Super Bowl champions. They were up early 10-0. Seahawks came back fighting. By the end of the first half, they scored 17 unanswered points and were on top. The Saints did not go down without a fight in the second half, but the one big play that put the Seahawks up was Marshawn Lynch in his epic return. It was like 67 yards. He ended up dodging like 7 or 8 tackles on his own, plus at least a dozen with assists. So that was what sealed the deal pretty much. They were able to score off that. Saints were able to score even after that in the last couple minutes of the game, but it was too much. So the Saints become the first Super Bowl team who had a 10-0 lead, or were up by 10 points in the game in the playoffs the next year, to end up losing. The Seahawks go on and they're taking on the Bears on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Second game of the weekend, we had the Colts versus the Jets. I picked the Colts. I was very happy with my Seahawks pick, though I was really very prepared for Peyton to screw things up for me. At halftime, the Colts were up 7-0. It wasn't an epic game by any means. I mean, I thought the Saints-Seahawks game was probably the best played game of the weekend, despite people saying that it was going to be the least interesting. And that's usually the case when you dub something as, going to be towards the bottom or the least, it's going to end up being the best. So the Colts and the Jets, though, even though the Colts were on top, anything could happen, and it did. The Jets ended up being able to keep pace with them. The Colts were up by 2, but then due to some very questionable calls with timeout usage and everything, the Jets were set up for a perfect field goal from Nick Folk in the final seconds of the game, which put them ahead. They, of course, go on to face the Patriots on Sunday at 4:30 Eastern. Hopefully it's not like the match that they had a couple weeks ago, because that's the case, then the Jets should just call it a day right now if they are going to plan on not scoring at all. So that put my picks at 1-1 for the weekend. So I was hoping for something good. I picked the Chiefs when they were taking on the Ravens. But, oh my God, were they slaughtered. Epic amount of turnovers. They turned over 5 times in the game alone after posting a record low for turnovers for the season. They had to go and blow it in the playoffs. The pressure was too much for them. So the Ravens are going to go on and take on the Pittsburgh Steelers on Saturday at 4:30 Eastern. The final game of the weekend, we had the Green Bay Packers against the Eagles. I had picked the Packers because they are just doing way too good in the last month, and the Eagles had way too questionable of a record. And even though the Packers were ahead and on top for most of the match, the Eagles were still in the match for most of the game until the last couple minutes, until the epic turnover in the end zone that kind of sealed the deal for them. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers threw for 3 touchdowns, and the good defense from the Packers meant that there was really no stopping them. That's what they needed to do to stop the Eagles. They came through. Now they're going to move on and take on the Atlanta Falcons on Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So later on the week, we will have our predictions for this weekend's games. We'll see if I can do a little bit better instead of going 2 for 4. Now to the box office estimates for the weekend. True Grit ended up being able to maintain its momentum from being #1 all week and ended up claiming the top spot from Little Fockers. So True Grit was on top with $15 million for the weekend. It now sits at $110 million altogether in less than 3 weeks. #2 was Little Fockers, which made $13.8 million for the weekend. So it sits at $124 million. Though it still has only done half the attendance of Meet the Fockers in the long run. #3, Season of the Witch, the latest Nicolas Cage movie, actually ended up not only opening higher than many of his previous low marks, but it also opened stronger than any medieval movie has opened in recent times, making over $10 million for the weekend, estimated at $10.7 million for a $40 million budget. So definitely did better for the company Relativity Media. They released it. They really had only done one movie before this, The Warrior's Way, and this one almost doubled that opening. That one didn't perform at all good, so maybe they're learning how to operate a movie company at this point. Meanwhile, number 4, down 48%, Tron Legacy made almost $10 million for the weekend. It's sitting at just under $148 million altogether, so it's still churning out money. Number 5, Black Swan had one of the best holdovers for the weekend, only dropping 6% to $8.35 million. It has made $61.5 million in 38 days, and it's not even at its highest location count because they plan on, Fox Searchlight does, releasing that into 2,000 locations on January 14th. So if you haven't seen it yet or haven't had the chance to see it, you'll definitely have that opportunity in the next week when they release it a lot wider than it is right now. Meanwhile, debuting at number 7, Country Strong made $7.3 million. I wasn't too far off with my $7.5 million prediction on that. It did a lot better than Crazy Heart when that had opened last year into wide release. They're kind of comparing movies, considering they're both music related and they're up for Oscars or debated to be up for Oscars. Though really the comparison doesn't hold well because Crazy Heart was started in a lot better of a limited release. They kind of rolled it out slowly. Country Strong was in 2 theaters for 2 weekends, and then they decided to throw out into almost 1,500 locations. So. Number 7, The Fighter for the weekend slowed 30% to $7 million, so that's sitting at $57.8 million. So it's going to start lagging a lot more behind Black Swan at this point if it doesn't have award momentum behind it. Number 8, The King's Speech is still hanging in there for Oscar movie, making $6.81 million from only 758 locations, almost $10,000 per theater average. Meanwhile, a lot of the family movies, that were big performers during the holiday season are starting to drop off a little bit. They take up the rest of the top 12. Number 9, Yogi Bear dropped 45% to $6.81 million for the weekend. It sits at $75.6 million, so just shy of its budget right now. Meanwhile, number 10, Tangled, still holding up a lot better than most of the holiday movies. It dropped 47% to $5.2 million, though it has almost $176 million in the till so far. Number 11, we have the third Chronicles of Narnia movie, which dropped over 50%, 54%, to $4.8 million. It's sitting at just shy of $95 million, so it will slowly cross $100 million whenever that does end up happening. Meanwhile, number 12, Gulliver's Travels. I'm still trying to figure out how they spent like $112 million on this Jack Black movie that looked like it cost about $30 million to make because some of the special effects weren't that great from the commercials even. It ended up dropping 50%, estimated at $4.7 million for the weekend. It has made under $35 million altogether. So we'll see if that's able to perform any better in the long run. Though around the world, it is performing a lot better than it is performing in America. It ended up making $24.6 million last week, bringing its foreign total to $48.6 million altogether, just under 50. So it might actually end up making money despite a huge price tag on it. Number 2 was Little Fockers. It made another $24.4 million. That puts its foreign total at $74 million, so it's still making money. Number 3, Tron Legacy, added $23.7 million to its total. It is now at $110 million for its foreign total. You add that to its domestic total, and it's starting to make some money right now, so good news for Disney. Number 4, The Dawn Shredder, made another $21.3 million. Its total sits at $213.3 million, so even if it's not performing as well as the other Chronicles of Narnia movies, it's still making money as well. Number 5, The Tourist, ended up having one of its best weekends yet, making $18 million. That puts its foreign total at $64.4 million, so that's going to start making some money soon, at least. Number 6, Tangled, hanging in around the world as well. Number 6 with $14.8 million, bringing its foreign tally to just under $150 million. Number 7, Harry Potter 7, adds another $14 million. That's sitting at $617 million for just its foreign total. So if you add the domestic total, it's around $900 million for a worldwide gross. So that's a huge success. Number 8, Megamind, ended up adding $11.5 million. Its foreign total's at $135.8 million. So it's made a little bit of money, but not the huge success that DreamWorks was hoping for. 9, Love and Other Drugs manages to post $7 million around the world. That brings its foreign total to $13.3 million. Ended up making money just from being released in America, so this is all profit from here on in. And meanwhile, number 10 was South Korean release, The Last Godfather. And now to jump to the movie news before we decide to jet out of here for today. The news we reported the other day about the Three Stooges casting, Peter Farrelly has come out and said that it's still open to anybody because they haven't really planned as much as the article said they have. Meanwhile, Ivan Reitman, the director of the first 2 Ghostbusters movies and still attached to the third one, he's got the No Strings Attached movie coming out with Ashton Kutcher and Natalie Portman. Pretty much he said that anything that you've heard over the last decade about Ghostbusters 3, don't believe it because they just finished the script. They had just turned in the script that they've been working on for a while, but now with that turned in, maybe some solid news will actually start coming out of it. Boston Legal creator David E. Kelley, for a while, he was trying to get a Wonder Woman show off the ground. Hollywood, for some reason, has a real big obsession with Wonder Woman, trying to make movies, TV series that always seem to fail. He ended up taking it to all 5 networks, and all of them ended up passing. Fox doesn't really have a good record for it, so they had to pass despite the fact that he's made a lot of creative and very successful series for them. ABC couldn't do it because Wonder Woman is a DC property, and ABC is a Disney-owned, and Disney owns Marvel, so not really a good decision there. Meanwhile, NBC and CBS also passed on it, and CW said they couldn't afford it, even though they have Smallville on, but I guess that's a little bit cheaper of a show for them to produce. So he said he's going to attempt maybe to do it in the future, but for now the project is dead. I don't care about Wonder Woman, so who gives a shit? Meanwhile, producer Neil Moritz has begun talking about Total Recall, the remake that they're doing with Colin Farrell. $200 million budget on it. Colin Farrell's already working out. According to him, they're not really going to base off the movies. They are going to actually stick to the Philip K. Dick short story. We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. That's where a lot of the things were based off of. The only thing he said they're not really doing, they're going to make it more of a realistic movie. So it's set in the real world. There's not going to be anything with Mars, like some of the other stories have done. They've also said they're going to do it in 2D. I guess there's something that they've come up with instead of going from the planet to Mars. It transports you from one side of the planet to the other. So some neat concepts, I guess. We'll just have to see if they all come together and make a good movie. Now to the big news for the day, the last 2 items we have. We'll start out with Scream 4. Apparently there has been a little bit of a plot detail that has leaked out. Now, it looks like Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, is now an author who's written about her experiences. She returns home to Woodsboro on the last stop of her book tour. Apparently, the last stop brings Ghostface back. There's something about Emma Roberts, the young actress who was in like Nancy Drew and a few other things. Something about her being a cousin to Sidney Prescott. That's how she's involved, and that link brings in all the teenagers. So, yeah, it looks like it could be alright. I like the Scream movies. I like the ones that sucked. Everyone thought the second and third one weren't nearly as good, and I like them maybe more than the first. So I'm willing to give it a shot. I've just heard that they might have changed the costume to like a scarecrow-looking thing, and I don't know. If there's no point to it, I don't understand. But if there's a reason that they need a new costume, then maybe I'll be for it. Other than that, though, it's one of those wait-and-see things. The first trailer was good, and that will be out in the next couple months. And to close out the news today, we've got the 3rd location where The Dark Knight Rises will be shooting has been revealed. They had previously announced that the UK and Los Angeles would serve as shooting locations in addition to one other city. Normally in years past, in previous Batman movies with Christopher Nolan, that city has been Chicago. Unfortunately with this one, for fans in Chicago who are hoping to get more glimpses, Detroit has won out as the shooting location. It'll be very interesting to see how Detroit portrays Chicago, portraying Gotham City. But I guess, I can't complain that the location changed. So that's all the news we've got for today. Hopefully you'll join us tomorrow for the next edition of the Daily Dizzle. As always, I'm Tommy Dizzlemits, and we'll see you then.